Yo, what's up, YouTube? Shout out to y'all. If you're wondering why the background's different, it's because I'm doing this during my live stream. This is my live stream setup. If you want to watch the games with me, make sure you're subscribed and notified so you don't miss it when I go live for the games, because I plan to be going live for most of the regular season game and for the rest of the preseason too. So check me out when that is the case. But now let's get into this game so far. And as always with the preseason, I really just kind of recap the first half of it unless something more significant happens. And we're going to start with the defensive side of the ball. Now, what's been interesting here, or what I noticed that was interesting, is somebody who's been fairly prominent on this channel. Something weird happened with him. And who I'm talking about is Perion Winfrey. And I'm interested to hear if they ask this question in the press conferences, because this is something that really piqued my interest. Basically, two undrafted guys got snaps in the first quarter at defensive tackles, but none of those guys were Perion Winfrey, who was a fourth-round pick. And then Perion Winfrey didn't get into the game until the fourth quarter, or not the fourth quarter, the second quarter, the immediate start of the second quarter. He comes in there in the middle of a drive. That to me sounds like discipline from a position coach for something. I don't know what that something is, but that's usually what that kind of a thing is discipline from a position coach, usually for like not being on time to a meeting. But that was weird, right? And look, the backup to this interior room is proving why they'll probably have two guys probably come off of other teams to be in this room, because it just wasn't impressive at all. The only play was from Glenn Logan, who made a nice play on a third and goal stop. Got some penetration out there, but nobody looked impressive in this first half. It wasn't the most encouraging effort by the interior defensive line at all. Not really encouraging from the backup edge rusher standpoint. I was a little bit disappointed when I saw out of Alex Wright and Isaiah Rochelle, as they showed some flashes in camp. Really weren't impressive this week. So that's that with the defensive line. We know there's not a lot of depth there. Defensive backs in this game, it's really hard to gauge, right? Because they don't even have like Greedy Williams out there at this point. It was like maybe some AJ Green, maybe some Martin Emerson. Now both of those guys left the game early after visiting the concussion tent. I hope they're all right. Well, not the concussion tent, but the blue medical tent. I hope those guys are okay. I hope they are fine. But they're probably not going to risk it with those two, as they're going to be rotational players. The rest of that secondary, I mean, they got chopped up pretty easy, but like it's hard for me to be too critical on guys like Perrion Motley, and like these are guys, Hurt Miller. Like these aren't guys who are going to make the team to play a lot of defensive back. If they do, they play special teams. So it's really, really hard for me to be extra critical of players in that position, because they're not really expected of much here. So there is that. And then I think there were some good plays here made by Martin Emerson, a couple of good plays made by AJ Green, some near interceptions. Like it wasn't all bad on the defensive side, but it wasn't great. And then let's flip the side to the offensive side, which, hey, offense has been coming around as of late, right? We've heard this from practices. We've heard this at the reports from the joint practice, that the offense is starting to look better for the Browns, right? Both Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson. Now, one name we haven't heard much of, just because he's a third-string quarterback right now, is Josh Dobbs. But Josh Dobbs and his performance in the preseason is encouraging for a number of reasons. One, because Josh Dobbs is going to be the backup. And you don't want the backup to be somebody that you think is like not an NFL level quarterback. Well, not an NFL level player, right? Josh Dobbs has looked like an NFL level player in the preseason. Now, it's a huge grain of salt, but he doesn't look like he doesn't belong out there. He doesn't look like he's overwhelmed. He looks like he's good out there. The caveat to that is this is kind of what Josh Dobbs is done his whole career, is look good in the preseason. He hasn't really had that many regular season snaps. But nonetheless, he looks better than he's ever looked in Cleveland. And that's good. I think you saw some good things. So the mobility there is interesting. I definitely would expect him to be in some packages during that 11-game suspension so they can get some of those mobile Deshaun Watson plays off without having Deshaun Watson in the game, because he is a pretty mobile guy at the quarterback position, as well as a smart guy making some big boy throws there. Like, I'm not at the point. I don't feel like it is mission critical if he's in the game. I don't want to start him for 11 games, but I don't feel like it's an awful situation. So I'm very happy with what the Browns have gotten out of Josh Dobbs so far. I mean, there's no competition between him and Josh Rosen as far as I've seen it. And that's cool. Why this is a bigger, not concern, but a bigger joy for me is if that's what they could get out of Josh Dobbs, if they can make Josh Dobbs look better, then it encourages me to see how they can get the most out of Jacoby Brissett. It encourages me to see how they can get the most out of Deshaun Watson when he comes back, whatever version of him you get in that 6 games that he plays this year, hopefully more because he makes the playoffs. But that is what is interesting. Oh, Tom Brady returned to practice is cool. But that is what's interesting about what we've seen out of Josh Dobbs. Is an indicator on what this offense does for quarterbacks, what this offense and what other players could look like in it, and what the coaching staff is doing and how well they're doing it. Again, Baker Mayfield had his best year of his career under Kevin Stefanski. It was only until he had beef with the offense that he started to look terrible, right? Like till he actively started to try to go against the offense. So I have faith that this offense does good things for quarterbacks and can elevate a quarterback's level of play because we've seen it so far in some guys' careers. So Josh Dobbs and what he's been able to do has been very encouraging in this preseason. There's a lot of other players to talk about. Let's talk about David Bell, who's probably the second most important guy that you want to hear from. David Bell looked good, had a drop. It wasn't a drop. Like, it's not going to count as a drop, right? But it was, you would want David Bell to come down with that ball. We need a name for that kind of a play, right? Where it's not a drop by technical standards, but it's a play that you would wish a wide receiver to come down with. And that's what happened with David Bell. He had a couple of those plays. Nothing mind-blowing yet, but encouraging stuff there. Anthony Schwartz similarly as well had one drop, like an out-and-out drop. And then came back with a nice little catch. Fine stuff from Anthony Schwartz, given that, what we saw from him last week. I just hope to never see again. So he was good there. Then we can talk about the running back position in Jerome Ford. I thought Jerome Ford looked pretty nice here. I thought Jerome Ford showed some nice stuff. No big runs. Dearness Johnson was amazing at the start of this game. He looked like Dearness Johnson. There's nothing really new I can add there. We know Dearness Johnson is really good. I think the second team offensive line actually looked pretty impressive. You have the usual suspects out there: Michael Dunn, Blake Hance, James Hudson, and I don't even know who they have at backup left tackle. Oh, is it Hubbard? It might be Hubbard. I don't know who's there at left tackle. But they looked fine. The backup center looks fine too. So no worries there. But yeah, quarterback position so far has looked good. Running back position so far has looked good. Wide receiver, a little bit. I have one concern. One real major concern with this team, and that's the amount of penalties that they've gotten throughout camp in the preseason. This team can't afford to have penalties, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and that's where we've seen it a lot. We've seen them have a ton of penalties on the offensive side of the ball. Can't continue to have that happen. This is not a team that can afford to fall behind the sticks. It's not that kind of offense. So that needs to be cleared up. I would love to see them play a clean game next week. The second thing that's really the main thing I'm concerned about. So that's the main thing I've been concerned about. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about when it comes to this game. I mean, it's not like there's... All right. Let's talk about the kicker. Let's talk about Cade York, the kicker. Look good. He looked good. He looked good on kickoffs. He looked good on field goals. He made a 1 yard field goal, and he made a 55 or 50 yard field goal in the rain. Pretty impressive stuff. Obviously, a lot of people excited about Cade York, and Cade York is really paying that off. So, shout out to Cade York. I really hope he's good because I don't want to come out here and talk about drafting another kicker or which kickers the Browns should sign and do that whole rodeo again. I just want it to be over with. So if Cade York is the guy, I get behind him. Hopefully he makes all his field goals. If he does, y'all going to buy the jersey and everything else. But that's what's been going on.